in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness has appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of importance thrust in these islands. Let thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands, and of those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ his sake. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. Members, House is now in session. Good morning.
Confirmation of minutes.
Members, the minutes of the 24th of February are being deferred.
Messages from the governor.
There are none.
Announcements by the speaker.
Yes, the announcements this morning, we've been given indication from the following members that they'll be absent today. MP Jan Richardson, MP Jason Wade, MP Anthony Richardson, MP Dennis Lister, MP Shade Adams, MP Scott Simmons, and Minister Weeks. They've all indicated their absence today, and we appreciate the notification.
Messages from the Senate.
There are none.
Papers and other communications.
There are none.
Petitions.
None.
Statements by ministers and junior ministers.
Statements by ministers this morning. We have 3 statements this morning. The first is in the name of the Deputy Premier. Deputy, would you like to present your statement at this point?
Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker. Good morning, members of the legislature and listening public. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to update this honorable House on the Ministry of Home Affairs strategy to enhance the island's local food production and food security. While the worst of the impacts of the pandemic, thankfully, recede in our rearview mirror, it has left us painfully aware of how much we rely on overseas exports. Not in recent memory has our local food security been of greater importance. Recent international events have shown that small island nations like Bermuda can be significantly impacted by supply chain issues as well as higher costs, quality, quantity, and availability of basic food products. These concerns translate into a critical need to improve Bermuda's food and nutritional security by developing and supporting a vibrant local agricultural sector. Recognizing that food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. Mr. Speaker, this unprecedented situation really makes us appreciate our island. Not only are we one of the most beautiful places on earth, but the island can be bountiful too. I must commend our intrepid farmers as they tenaciously produce food for us, despite the ravages of hurricanes, droughts, pests, and unwanted attention of night farmers. They need all the assistance that they can, that we can give, so that they can keep doing what they do best. That said, We also need to attract new farmers to take up the challenge to ensure that the island has continued supply of good quality food and a low reliance on the need to import from overseas. Mr. Speaker, going forward, it is recognized that a comprehensive and strategic response to both challenges and opportunities is required in order to strengthen Bermuda's food and nutritional security, resilience to natural and man-made shocks. Mr. Speaker, this initiative is so important that the government that the integrated agricultural strategy has now formed part of the government's economic development strategy. The IAS will assist with increased domestic food production and also aims to increase the agricultural sector's contribution to Bermuda's GDP. The general objectives of this strategy need to include the following: making inputs cheaper to assist in lowering the cost to produce good quality local food, help reduce preventable losses of locally produced food, provide good quality storage of produce, identify opportunities to enhance local production through the addition of new crops and technologies to grow these new crops and or existing crops more efficiently. Provide direct assistance to local farmers through advice, training, and services to improve output and reduce preventable losses of locally produced food. Explore means of making more land available for production and to use that which is in production more efficiently. Explore opportunities to add value to locally grown food. Encourage greater participation and job growth in the agricultural sector. Better utilize technology to improve domestic food production. Assess and strengthen workforce development needs. Promote and develop food cooperatives. Over the next year, we will endeavor to implement these objectives by developing an IAS that will contain key components, including the following strategies: a crop strategy, a dairy strategy, a livestock poultry strategy, a honeybee and pollinator strategy, a fruit tree strategy, and aquaculture strategy. Mr. Speaker, at this time, both the crop strategy 2016 to 2021 and the draft dairy strategy 2013 are under review to better reflect the current needs since the onset of the COVID pandemic. This review is being undertaken by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources in consultation with the Board of Agriculture. Work is to begin on the livestock, poultry, honey, fruit tree, and aquaculture components. In the coming months, the department will undertake consultation with key government and industry stakeholders to gain their insight into what should be included in the strategies and how those recommendations should be prioritized. So please stay tuned. Mr. Speaker, while the strategy will set out the actions for the medium to long term, we have a number of priority initiatives that are required to address several pressing issues. These include a crop innovation study aimed at identifying opportunities to replace imports. This will be undertaken by a consultant agriculture economist who will undertake an assessment of opportunities for new crop varieties and means to increase production of those crops currently being grown by local farmers. The findings of this study will be shared with industry so that they may consider new opportunities for production. The identification of new land for increased production. Land or lack of it is a critical challenge for the agriculture industry. Farmers need opportunity to plant both in field crops as well as produce using hydroponics and aquaponics systems. With this in mind, The GIS-based arable audit project will be completed. This will provide a good understanding of what land is available and provide opportunity to negotiate putting this land into production. Introduce measures to curtail nighttime farming and selling of illegally harvested produce. Earlier, I referenced a problem that farmers are having with night farming. Produce being taken not for individual use, but on a commercial scale. I must reiterate again that the stealing from fields is an offense, and officers are ramping up their oversight of fields. Offenders will be prosecuted when caught. To help with this, we will fully implement the in-field camera monitoring program. A number of cameras are already operational, and we encourage all of our commercial farmers to contact the department to discuss with us their problem areas so that we may be able to assist in tackling this problem together. I would ask the public that if anyone who is not a farmer attempts to sell large amounts of produce to them, not to purchase this food. I would further encourage members of the public to please report any suspicious behavior to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources at environment@gov.bm or 236-4201. Farmers can report any incidents directly to the Bermuda Police Service by phoning 211. We will also address illegal selling of produce through the introduction of a registration of commercial farmers to properly identify commercial farmers who sell goods roadside and to strengthen the penalties for those who participate in night farming. This will require amendments to the Agriculture Act 1930. It is not intended that this be a cumbersome or costly for our farmers, but more a simple identification system similar to that used by the commercial fishermen. Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure that as we encourage more growing, that we have the infrastructure to store it optimally as possible and that it is made available to the public in the best quality as it can be. As such, we will develop, subject to budgetary approvals, a replacement agriculture service center to support increased local production, particularly storage of locally produced food. Lastly, but certainly not least, we will provide critical advice and direct support to farmers to assist with reducing preventable losses caused by disease and boost in field production. Industry has made this specific request to the government, and we have listened. We have recruited a seasoned consultant agronomist to provide direct support to farmers to assist with in-field disease identification and prevention, soil health and management, seed selection and assessment of crop seed varieties to produce the best yields, securing of materials and supplies for the agriculture industry, pesticide use and their application, development of industry and grading standards, and post-harvest handling and added value. I am pleased to say that the consultant agronomist, now Mr. Speaker, I just want to indicate, and I apologize for this, the gentleman's name is incorrect here. It should be Stuart Swanson. It is printed as Scott Swanson. I'm happy in my office to send you a corrected version, but just for the public and everybody who's reading, that name should be actually Stuart, not Scott. Mr. Stuart Swanson will be starting with us as of the 1st of April, 2023. I have no doubt that this will be eagerly welcomed by the Farmers Association. Mr. Speaker, in the coming months, I look forward to coming before you and supporting and reporting on our progress of these very important initiatives. In closing, I would like to take this opportunity to encourage the public to buy local, support our farmers and fishermen, so that they can continue to provide for you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. The next statement this morning, ministers, members, rather, is in the name of the Madam AG. Madam, would you like to present your statement at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today gratified to inform this Honorable House that the special measures for child witnesses as contained in Part 5 of the Child Safeguarding Miscellaneous Amendment Act 2019 have now been utilized for the first time successfully at trial in the Supreme Court. Honorable members will recall that the Child Safeguarding Miscellaneous Amendments Act 2019 received royal assent on the 6th of August 2019. Part 5 of the Act, which specifically makes provisions for special measures for child witnesses in criminal trials, came into operation on 15th July 2022. Consequently, Bermuda today fully meets the requirements of the Lanzarote Convention or the Convention on Protection of Children against Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse. Mr. Speaker, as I avowed in previous ministerial statements in this Honorable House on the subject matter, members will appreciate the practical challenges and sensitivities at play when securing evidence in open court from child witnesses in sexual assault cases. Judges must balance the procedural fairness to the accused against the need to safeguard child witnesses from being re-traumatized by the trial experience. The newly enacted statutory provisions for special measures for child witnesses in sexual offenses provide a robust framework for judicial decision-making on the range of procedural and evidential issues in such cases. One of the new special measures that is now available is the pre-recording of a child's evidence. Mr. Speaker, with the astute assistance of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms. Cindy Clark, I am able to share with this Honorable House the following account of the practical application of special measures permitting the recording of child witnesses' evidence by pre-recording in the Supreme Court. Mr. Speaker, in November 2022, and I am intentionally not stating specific dates or gender to protect the victim, pre-recorded child witness evidence was used for the very first time in this jurisdiction in a Supreme Court criminal trial. In that instance, a young victim under the age of 10 gave their evidence in Justice Sabir Williams' chambers, where it was recorded for later use at trial. Present in the judge's chambers as the evidence was recorded were presiding Judge Justice Sabir Williams, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms. Cindy Clark, Defense Counsel, Ms. Elizabeth Christopher, a witness care officer from the Department of Public Prosecutions, a court-appointed intermediary, and the court clerk. Including the child witness, there were 7 persons in total. All of the attorney's questions put to the child witness were pre-vetted by the intermediary to ensure that the questions were suitably age-appropriate. The defendant was not allowed in the judge's chambers during the recording of the evidence. Rather, the defendant was located in the courtroom with an audiovisual link provided for them to observe the child's evidence as it was collected in real time. Great care was taken to ensure that the defendant could communicate with their legal counsel privately and that the child witness was not able to see nor hear the defendant during the process. Additional soft-touch accommodations included the absence of official courtroom attire, such as wigs and gowns. In fact, I am told that everyone physically present in the judge's chambers wore something pink, an ode to the child witness's favorite color. Whilst the evidence of the child was of most personal nature, as it was in reference to circumstances of serious allegations of sexual exploitation, the tone, language, and flow of the interview was kept light, moderate, and even-paced by all concerned. Demonstrably, the focus was on the well-being of the child without compromising the quality and reliability of the evidence. On final review by the professionals who participated, they would concur that the process ensured that the child was treated with dignity, respect, and compassion. Mr. Speaker, in that case, the recorded child witness's evidence was played for the jury during a Supreme Court trial at the close of 2022. The defendant was unanimously convicted by the jury of each of the sexual exploitation charges made against him. We can all breathe a sigh of collective relief in knowing that justice was truly served in this case without having the court environment contribute to re-traumatizing the witness. This child witness was never required to confront the defendant, nor was she obligated to testify in the intimidating courtroom setting in front of the adult jury. The defendant faces sentencing next month, and the prosecution is confident that this was a secure conviction made possible because of the use of the special measures provisions. Mr. Speaker, I can also report that a second use of the special measures procedure took place during the week of January 30th to February 3rd, 2023. I am advised by the Director of Public Prosecutions that the pre-recording of the child's evidence in that case was equally successful. Competence by professionals in their use of the procedure and the many recognized benefits to the overall administration of justice are lauded across the legal profession and the Interagency Child Safeguarding Committee. I am further advised that interest among the legal profession is such that the Bermuda Bar Association is looking to run a training session for its members on the special measures procedure. Mr. Speaker, the government has been unfaltering in reforming our laws to ensure adequate safeguarding of our children and guaranteeing that new child safeguarding laws are effectively implemented and operationally successful. To that end, budgetary resources via the Department of Public Prosecution's 2022-23 vote were properly used to procure 20 iPads for the very purpose of pre-recording and playing child evidence. In concluding my remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to take this opportunity to thank Justice Sabir Williams and the staff at the Registry of the Supreme Court for urgently facilitating the pre-recording of the evidence of children in the sexual offense trials mentioned. The professional conduct of our public officers has been exemplary as they facilitated all of the necessary logistics for the collection of the evidence with dignity and integrity without compromising the overall fairness of the trial process. I extend additional gratitude to the Director of Public Prosecutions and her stalwart team of Crown prosecutors and witness care officers for their persistent efforts to aid in upholding the law, especially in these extremely sensitive cases. Public officers from the Ministry of Legal Affairs and Constitutional Reform and from the Ministry of Social Development and Seniors, as well as partners from the criminal justice and child safeguarding teams, took time to attend parts of the trial to bear witness to the effectiveness of the special measures provisions in action. They are to be thanked for their collective engagement, which adds to the ripple effect of public confidence in the measures and ultimately in reducing the hesitation of victims and families to report crimes against children. When speaking on this topic, Mr. Speaker, I always close with a clarion call to the public to remind us that every child deserves a safe and healthy childhood, which means we must all remain vigilant and play our role as we continue to protect our children from those who seek to cause them harm. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam AG. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Economy and Labor. Minister, would you like to present your statement at this time?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
I am elated to rise today to present to this honorable House an update on investment in the Economic Investment Certificate and Residential Certificate Policy, and to advise of revisions that the government is making to enhance the policy and generate greater levels of economic activity in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, the objective of the EIC is to fully harness immigration as one of many tools for creating economic growth for Bermuda. The EIC program thus far has created significant economic activity and helped market Bermuda as a place to reside and do business. Bermuda is attractive to affluent individuals because it provides safety and stability. It is a sophisticated, connected area with a temperate climate and a well-regulated business environment. Since the inception of the Economic Investment Certificate and Residential Certificate Policy, there has been a total associated investment of $371.6 million. This investment includes $113.4 million in real estate investment. Mr. Speaker, the data supports that while EIC recipients are only required to invest a minimum of $2.5 million into the Bermuda economy, we find they generally invest much more. Under the revised policy, qualifying investments are possible in Bermuda in any one or more of the following areas, and the list is not exclusive: purchase Bermuda real estate, residential or commercial, invest in the development and launch of a new Bermuda-based business, purchase Bermuda government bonds, contribute to the sinking fund, contribute to the Bermuda Trust Fund, donate to a Bermuda registered charity, make a direct or indirect equity investment in an existing Bermuda-based business, excluding exempt undertakings, or invest in such other social or practical venture that benefits Bermuda as may be determined by the minister. Mr. Speaker, the 2021 Economic Investment Certificate and Residential Certificate Policy stated that a person who satisfies the eligibility requirements of an investment of at least $2.5 million into the Bermuda economy may be granted permission by the minister responsible for immigration to reside in Bermuda for a period of 5 years. At the end of 5 years, the EIC holder will be eligible for a residential certificate pursuant to Section 32(5) of the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act. It has been determined that Bermuda's aging population will have significant implications on the island's economic growth if steps are not taken to reverse this demographic trend. For this reason, the 2021 Economic Investment Certificate and Residential Certificate Policy has been revised to allow the minister to grant a residential certificate pursuant to Section 32(5) of the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act without the need to wait 5 years after the Economic Investment Certificate has been granted. The primary intention of this policy change is to increase and sustain economic activity and to create jobs in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, the revision of the 2021 Economic Investment Certificate and Residential Certificate Policy will be referred to as the Economic Investment Residential Certificate Policy, with all verification requirements continuing as was done under the former 2021 policy. In addition, the rights and restrictions applicable to a resident certificate holder under this policy shall not apply to the holder of a residential certificate granted prior to this policy coming into effect under the 2015 or the 2003 residential certificate policies. However, they do apply to the holder of an economic investment certificate or residential certificate granted under the 2021 policy. Mr. Speaker, this revised policy will be effective 31st of March 2023 by order of the minister. Complete information about the economic investment residential certificate policy, including the policy, frequently asked questions, and the expression of interest form, is available on the Bermuda Development Agency website. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr.
Thank you.
Speaker, as an additional note, I will table the revised policy in the next sitting of this House.
Thank you, Minister. Appreciate that. Members, that brings us to a close of the statements for this morning. We'll now move on.
Reports of committees,
There are none.
question period.
Question period. This morning, we have questions. We will now move on to the question period. Ministers, members, we actually have questions for each of the three statements that were given this morning. We'll start with the first statement, Deputy Premier. The MP Premier would like to put a question to you, and the clock has started now.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to the listening public. And thank you, Minister, for your statement on food production and food security. My first question is this: for all the very welcome discussion around increasing food production on the island, is it your view that we're actually seeing an increase in food production?
Minister?
I would say yes. I do believe that a considerable amount of interest in the public over the last couple of years in food production, not only perhaps at there are more people participating, but also from a commercial standpoint, there are a few additional persons who've gotten interested in it. But also, I think individuals, a lot of home gardening has increased. If I can anecdotally verify, even in my own district, there are numerous people who are actually creating their home gardens and have certainly through the pandemic time and even prior to that. So I believe there is a increased interest. There's a program being done by Health, of which there has been quite a vibrant activity around that. And there's a number of community gardens which are quite active as well. So there is more interest in gardening generally being done by the public and others.
Supplementary? Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary. Does that also extend to livestock, chicken, production of beef and the likes as well? That it's growing or?
Those are areas which I do not believe have necessarily expanded over recent years. In fact, perhaps I think we all can attest there's been a reduction in that type of farming, particularly. There's only one whole-scale chicken farm, and then there's only one abattoir. Well, actually, I think there are two, but there is one abattoir in Sands, and I believe Mr. Watson's farm also operates a smaller abattoir. So that area has not expanded, but those are areas to look at. As we know, some of us who may be a few years older remember there were other operations years ago in Bermuda, but reality has changed that. But there is room to do some other things which can be done carefully going forward, and we're going to examine that. As I said in my statement, Mr. Speaker, there are a number of strategies around crop, dairy, and other areas that we're going to be looking at to see what else can be done and what could be further developed.
Thank you. Supplementary? Yes. MP Jackson?
Yes, please. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the minister, one, whether there are any restrictions on home gardening or the raising of any small livestock such as poultry.
Minister?
I don't believe there are, and I can go and verify, but I think I think the restriction is really the Bermudian lifestyle. Has changed from years ago. I remember growing up, and this is a very interesting circumstance. When I was a little boy, I lived in Joe's Alley, and my grandparents had literally a farm in their backyard with ducks, rabbits, all types of things. But that sort of lifestyle has changed, and that was in the middle of Hamilton. That has changed clearly in the past 20, 30 years or so. That has evolved. I think many people at one point did have that. And unfortunately now it seems as if when people do have certain types of animal care or cultivation in their backyards, it gets out of hand, like chickens, for instance. Some people just don't actually manage that system very well, which is why we perhaps have our ongoing problem with feral chickens. So, but there are no restrictions. It's just on it, but I will confirm that and happily report back to the honorable member.
Okay. Further supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Well, given the feral chicken situation, but also given the prospects of being able to raise small farm animals that could be used as a food source, would the government consider having any regulations or guidance put in place so that those that do have the land could be able to once again safely and respectfully raise small farm animals and agriculture?
Minister?
There is already regulations in place to govern those who decide to operate as, okay, like commercially in this space. And so that's where it is. If somebody's going to do it, it's certainly they need to make sure they have the proper space and attributes and resources to do it. And that would be something that my ministry currently oversees.
Supplementary? Well, you've had your two supplementaries. Anyone else with supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Or your supplementary or new?
This is
question?
my first supplementary.
Okay.
Thank you. You've confirmed, Honorable Minister, that there's been an increase in local farming. Can you assist us with whether or not that's in terms of food being produced or land being used for farming or both? Thanks.
Minister?
I think we can assume if people are doing more cultivation, they're using more land to do it, even if it's a little square backyard garden. But from a commercial level, I do believe that with some of the programs that the Ministry of Public Works is doing, and what, based on reports I have, I'm not even sure if Public Works has a lot more land left over that's not being actually actively cultivated. I believe most of the land that they have allocated actually is in cultivation. So from a commercial standpoint, there is quite a bit going on. We're going to look at through the study what more, because technically we have about 700 and sorry, Mr. Speaker, honorable member is giving you some valuable information. There has been some increase in agriculture production, particularly as it contributes to GDP over the last couple of years. So that will be evident that there is more cultivation. And as I was saying, due to my understanding between communication between my department and Public Works, most of the land that they have available is actively being cultivated. But technically, from the standpoint of a planning, we have about 700 or plus acres of land that is zoned agricultural. Only about half of that is actually being actively cultivated. So there is room for more technically, but the arable audit, which I mentioned, will actually determine, because there perhaps are some areas of land that are zoned agricultural that actually aren't suitable for agriculture. They're just zoned due to perhaps past identification. But a more drilled down audit, of which we are completing the work. Much of the work has already been done, but it needs to be fully completed. And that will be certainly available in the public domain, and we'll have a better picture of what land is actually available, whether public or private, for future active cultivation.
Thank you.
Second supplementary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister. You sort of started to touch on my next question. So you had stated in your statement that you're going to make more land available. Is that the land that will be identified after the conclusion of the audit that you just referenced in your last answer?
Minister?
Yes, the audit will help very much with that, Mr. Speaker, to answer the member's question, because as I said in my previous statement, there may be some of that 700 and plus acres that although zoned, may not be suitable. It may just be land that over time, perhaps years ago, was zoned agriculture for a reason, but when you drill down and you do a soil examination, you do much more scientific examination, you find that it's not suitable. Bermuda's soil is not necessarily the best for the type of mass commercial cultivation that many people think would actually be helpful to us. So there are things that need to be done, much more in-depth study, which the integrated strategy will actually carry out. And I'm very pleased to be working with the Minister of Economy and Labor on this, because although we may have two separate responsibilities, we're all ultimately for the same goal, is advancing agricultural production, but also making sure it contributes positively to our GDP.
Thank you. Second question?
Second question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, you mentioned that an individual's being brought or has been brought into the island to work on this. I think you said his name was Stuart Swanson, correcting your statement. Could you please give us some details about why Mr. Swanson has been selected for this task?
Minister?
Mr. Swanson is a highly experienced agricultural agronomist. He not only has been to Bermuda before, and our farmers are familiar with him from his previous engagement here, but he is also experienced with the region. He works out of Florida. Just some like background, happy to give more publicly once we get going on this public, once he's on the island. He's not here until his starts in April, as I said in my statement. But he has great experience in the region, in islands like Barbados and Bahamas, all of which are all actively looking to grow and advance their own agriculture production. But he has already been here. He has worked with our farmers in the past. They have been pressuring, if I can just say very directly, my ministry to acquire someone with this skill, because they found that it was greatly helpful to them when he was here in the past. So we're doing our best to help our farmers. I am glad that we are going to be able to bring in Mr. Swanson again, because I certainly believe he will be of great help to our farmers in the goals that we have outlined in the integrated agricultural strategy.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, first supplementary. Thank you.
Yes.
Minister, What is the scope of the work that Mr. Swanson will be doing? You identified a number of policy decisions, sort of a cooperative, the integrated agricultural strategy update. You mentioned all of these various sub strategies regarding crops and dairy and honey, et cetera. So what is the scope of the work that he will be doing? Thank you.
I think for the moment, my statement deals with that in as best details I can give, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Supplementary?
Second supplementary,
Yes.
do you have an anticipated cost?
That can be dealt with during the budget, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Noted. Third question?
Yes, third question, Mr. Speaker. You spoke of food security and the integrated agricultural strategy. If, perish the thought, we face some other catastrophic event or pandemic which prevents the importation of food or a diminishment in the importation of food, does the minister have a view of how long Bermuda can last without arrivals? Are we in weeks? Are we in months? What would the situation be there?
Minister?
Speaker, I'm not trying to be evasive on this, but that's likely to never happen. And I say that because during the pandemic time, one thing this government did was build a very strong relationship with our importers and our grocers and others. And quite detailed plans were discussed, and were discussed over a lot of time about what we would do if the pandemic got worse and if certain ports became inaccessible. As we know, no one knew where it was going to go. There are very detailed strategies that would ensure that Bermuda would not have that situation arise. And I can assure members of this House and the public that the government and our private sector in this space have very detailed strategies. We continue to meet under the auspices of the Ministry of National Security to discuss these issues. And there are, with our shippers, with our wholesalers, with our grocers, with all suppliers, and there are contingencies for every possibility that could be imagined so that Bermuda would not find ourselves in that situation. So I don't believe I'm being overly confident here. I am certain, Mr. Speaker, that that would not happen because of the plans that have been exhaustively put together in cooperation with a number of entities in Bermuda to ensure that would not happen.
Thank you. First sub?
First supplementary, thank you. Still on food security and integrated agricultural strategy. You spoke, Minister, of night farming, and thank you for your encouragement to the general public. My question on that is, what are the police doing in relation to your policy? Has there been liaison? The reason I ask is that I was informed, and I can't vouch for the accuracy of what I was informed, that a member of the public reported night farming to the police, and the police didn't do anything. Is there a liaison going on between your ministry and the police as to what their policy should be?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I can't speak to any particular case, but the answer is yes. My department and the police do liaison closely as well as with the Farmers Association on these matters.
Thank you. Second sub, or you're complete?
I think my last sub now, Ms.
Yeah.
And last question, last sub,
Yeah.
still on integrated agricultural strategy. You mentioned the registration process. You assured the public that that would not be about being cumbersome or cost for those who wish to farm. I'm assuming if someone failed to register, there would therefore be no specific penalties or fines or criminal aspects for that.
Minister?
I was just referencing an initiative that we're going to actually bring about. I can't speak to what any penalties or fines. This is merely a scheme to ensure that every member of the public can properly identify a farmer who is allowed to sell by the roadside, that they are actually a commercial farmer. It is no different from what we do with our fishermen, and they participate annually or regularly with getting their identification cards so that they can be properly identified. So it'll be just a reflection of the same system, as I stated in my statement, as what we do with our commercial fishermen.
Okay. That brings the end of the questions from MP
Mr. Speaker?
Chairman, MP Dunphy.
I had a supplementary on that.
Oh, you have a supplementary on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning.
Put your supplementary on that?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me declare my interests. I am a part of food importing business, but I fully support the statement by the minister today and the initiative by the government. In regard to the infield camera monitoring system, can the honorable minister please provide some background of the budget for this system, and the onus is shared between the farmer and the government as well on the payment of it.
Minister?
Any budgetary matters to this, I will happily answer during the budget, Mr. Speaker. But this expenditure would have been in our previous year, not in the upcoming year, and future expenditure, I'll happily give more detail during the budget. But it's an initiative that we decided we do to help our farmers. We are bringing in the cameras. They will be provided to the farmers at cost with no profit for the government. We've already begun to experiment with the cameras and see if they're effective so that we could ensure we have the right cameras. So we're working with the farmers on this. They will be provided the cameras at cost if they wish to acquire them.
Further supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
MP Jackson?
My question is, the use of the cameras, will those just be for the farmers that are leasing government arable land and growing crops on land that's government, or will they be able to access and have those cameras made available at cost for sort of the privately owned land?
Minister?
The answer is yes. Any commercial farmer, irrespective of where they're farming, will have access to those cameras.
Okay. You have a second sub on that?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Speaker, just a quick one. The actual monitoring of the cameras, will that be something that the farmers will be responsible for monitoring the footage, or will that be something the police will be involved with?
The cameras will be monitored by the farmers. I think everybody who knows how these remote cameras work, the person who operates it can go and check it on a regular basis. But as I said, the police are actively working with us on this initiative because we understand to ensure that this sort of activity is dealt with. So the police know what we're doing, and we're working with them at every step, and as well as with our farmers.
Okay. Opposition Leader, you have a supplementary?
Yes, just, does this program provide the same privilege to the protections of private farmers and not commercial farmers? Because private farmers may also have the same challenge. They may have a large garden in their backyard. They may not sell it, but the thieves or the knife farmers come along and do what they have to do, be it citrus or otherwise. So will they have the same protection?
Minister?
This program is for commercial farmers. I think everybody knows those cameras are quite affordable for anyone. Anybody can acquire them, so there's no special need that anybody needs to go through to acquire one of these cameras. In fact, one of the examples that I saw prior to our purchase was there is a local farmer who's purchased their own camera, and they operate it on their own. But this is for commercial farmers, those who are applying the trade, who are experiencing the worst of this actual circumstance of night farming. It's to help them.
No further supplementaries on that one? Okay, the Minister, the next member who has a question for you is MP Dunkley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Honorable Minister, previously said that the full support for this program, but to the Honorable Minister, in light of some of the current challenges we certainly have within farming Bermuda, what are we doing to rectify those? For example, I've been aware for some time that our potato production will be cut in half, and actually it's in the paper today. And this is because, as farmers have said, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources has been very slow to approve the permit. So let me put it in a different way. There's a flawed permitting process. So the farmers have missed the deadline to actually get the seed in the field. And obviously, that I think most of us know that potatoes are a staple food, and we have a great deal of storage available. So this year, there's going to be a larger importation of potatoes because our production is going to be down. So question to the Honorable Minister, what is being done to deal with the challenges between the farmers and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources?
I knew this one would come up, Mr. Speaker, so I'm happy to answer the question. I actually refute the assertions in the actual article. I only just saw it myself. Seed potato was acquired this past season, late November, early December of last year. That seed potato was bought in. The majority of farmers bought all the seed potato, and that seed potato has been planted. I don't know how anyone could actually say that there is not going to be enough potato when those potatoes haven't even been reaped yet. So how can anyone know now that there isn't going to be enough potato when those potatoes haven't even been reaped? It's almost like trying to predict the future. But I reject that on the basis as well, is that the amount of seed potato that was bought in late 2022 was the same amount that was bought in the previous year. So all that seed potato, which was actually purchased by virtually every farmer, commercial farmer, has been purchased, has been prepared, has been put in the ground. So until such time as they begin reaping that, it is impossible to say that there's going to be a shortage. There were a few farmers who chose not to purchase that potato, a very small group who chose not to buy it from a certain farmer because they didn't want to buy it from that farmer. I can't get into all the interreactions within the farming community, but I am certain that the amount of seed potato that was acquired late last year, it was put in the ground around the exact same time, similar time as it is put in annually, and it was the same amount as had been acquired in previous years. So we will see if it's been a shortage. I certainly reject the assertions that have been published in the paper today, but they are from certain farmers, and I would not, at this point, say as representative of all of the farming community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker, yes, I thank the Honorable Minister for the explanation. Mr. Speaker, my comments were clear that I was informed by certain farmers who have been in the industry for a period of time and have a lot of arable land to field, that the supply will be about half, and only time will tell. So the supplementary, Mr. Speaker, is can the minister inform this Honorable House what is being done to deal with some of the issues between the farmers and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources?
Mr. Speaker, there is ongoing dialogue and work done with our local farmers. In fact, there is a particular officer who on a daily basis deals with the farmers, deals with their issues, supports them and assists them in whatever ways that the government can. So that is an ongoing process. As we know with many industries, having concerns and issues that have to be addressed is not unique to the farming industry. Like in Bermuda. So you work out those issues, but you continue dialogue, you continue to discuss, you work in solutions. And the role of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, perhaps particularly the plant protection area, is to protect Bermuda and to ensure that we have a safe, healthy, natural environment with nothing that comes in that brings risk to our delicate biodiversity in my particular farming, because as we've seen in the past, I'm sure the honorable member is familiar with this, in that if you bring in certain things that perhaps have certain disease or haven't gone through the proper examinations, you could destroy farming like that. And we have many examples of where this could potentially have happened. And the reason why we can do what we do is because we have a very robust protection system. And I can tell you this, Mr. Speaker, there are other islands in the region that wish they had Bermuda system. So yes, there's sometimes this friction between farmers and the department, but that's to the best interests of the country.
Supplementary? MP Jackson, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given and accepting what the minister has just provided the House. I would like to ask the question again around the actual procedures. Given the fact that this is a timely matter, would the minister be willing at any time to even revisit the procedures that are put in place, the timeliness of it, and the urgency in some cases to even get seed into the ground without missing the planting timeline? But I'm asking specifically around the actual procedure and the timing, given that, sometimes we do have to work overtime or, long hours to get things done.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, we're always looking to review and refine any procedures or process that might actually be problematic or provide challenges. And I've tasked every department in my ministry to do that, whether it be planning, whether it be in the Department of Environment, all departments to look at ways that they can do things better, particularly as they are interacting with stakeholders, that they be mindful of the sensitivities and be understanding and be flexible where they can. So yes, we will do that, and I will continuously look to see where we can improve if we have to improve.
Okay, supplementary? No. Second question? Okay. Minister, that brings a close to questions on your statement this morning. We'll now move on. Madam AG, there are members who would like to put questions for your statement. MP Pearman?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Honorable and Learned Minister for her statement. Minister, you brought in these changes to child witness evidence in, I think, 2019. At that time, you had our support for the amendments and indeed our commendation. And I too would like to take the opportunity to thank the people you did, namely the justice, the judge, the DPP, the child support safety teams, et cetera, and their teams. My question is in terms of your fulfillment of the Lanzarote Convention, which you referenced in your statement. What other steps are being taken to implement that convention? Thank you.
MAG?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The convention is under review by the Social Development Ministry. They have a child safeguarding committee that was established under the Children Act 1998. And in practical terms, they keep it under review and recommendations are made to the respective ministries for any amendments or policy changes that are necessary to strengthen and uphold the provisions of that convention. So at this time, it lies with that committee and we await recommendations accordingly.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thank you. Yes, first supplementary. Do you anticipate that recommendations will be forthcoming? And if so, what sort of timeframe? Thank you.
The recommendations have been drafted and there is an underlying policy document that accompanies them. When the minister puts them before the cabinet, and I'm not going to steal her thunder, but they are in draft form at this time. So I would expect that they will be received by the cabinet and considered very shortly.
Supplementary?
No, second question. Thank you.
Second question. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You mentioned how the process will work, and you discussed how the questions by defense counsel in chambers will be pre-vetted by the intermediary. I think you said to be age appropriate. My question is this: what happens if there is a disagreement, and I'm not saying there has been, but if there were a disagreement between defense counsel and the intermediary about the appropriateness of the question? Is that then adjudicated by the judge?
That is correct.
Okay. Supplementary?
Yes, still on the process. You also mentioned in your statement the Bar Association has invited members of the bar to have training programs to understand how this process will work. Are there any other suggestions emanating from the Bar Association or the Bar Council in relation to this process?
I have not been briefed in that regard, and the member will know that once, if there's anything forthcoming from the bar, it will be circulated to all members, and he would have notice accordingly as a member.
Supplementary?
Yes.
MP Jackson?
This is all quite new to me, but I'm just curious, given the population, the members that would be within chambers during this interview process, and I could imagine it'd be just as intimidating for a 7-year-old to be around judges and lawyers, et cetera. And so I just didn't know whether a family member or somebody who is, really close to the child, or an environment that makes the child comfortable or more comfortable, would be something that would benefit the process, or do they feel that it would be just fine with lawyers and judges in the room?
Angie?
The child is able to have a person that they feel close to, family member, otherwise present at the time. Every accommodation, Mr. Speaker, is made to ensure that the child is comfortable and able to give witness evidence in these circumstances. I will say that although the Act came into operation 2019, Part 5, as I mentioned, did not. There was a substantial amount of training and preparedness that was necessary to make sure that protocols and everything was in place. And as in my statement, I outlined some of the activity around ensuring that our child witnesses are prepared, comfortable, and able to give evidence. So we're pleased with the advances in that regard, which will continue.
Yeah. Supplementary or?
Yes, so I would just thank the Honorable Minister. And again, her closing statement was that she is seeking to enhance the safety and happiness of children. And we commend and agree that statement. Thank you.
No question? This question period. I was waiting for a question out of that. Right? So do you have a third question or not?
No, I'm done. There's
Okay.
another statement coming.
Thank you. Madam AG, you're done with questions for this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
MP Hayward, Minister Hayward, sorry. There is a question that a member wishes to put questions to you as well. MP Perriman, would you like to put your question?
Yes, thank you, Honorable Minister, for your statement regarding the EIC, which is the attempt to get people from abroad to invest into Bermuda in exchange for residency or eligibility for residency or certificates. My question is in regards to the suggestion that the existing situation is going to be amended. I understood your statement to mean that it is no longer necessary for the applicant to reside here for 5 years before becoming eligible for a Section 5 residential certificate. Have I correctly understood that that's what's happening, that eligibility is being brought forward? It doesn't have to wait 5 years. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, the policy has been amended so that it's not two separate stages. So under the current policy, before the revisions, you got presented with the economic investment certificate, which is a residential certificate policy, which is valid for 5 years, after which time persons can obtain a residential certificate for indefinite stay. How we've amended the policy is so that persons who apply for the residential certificate no longer get a residential certificate underneath the EIC policy, but they automatically get the residential certificate for indefinite stay. The residency requirement is still valid. One must be resident in Bermuda for at least 90 days to take advantage of the residential certificate policy, as well as hold their investment for 5 years to remain eligible.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that very clear answer, Minister. So as I understand it, in order to first cross the threshold of the EIC, you have the 2.5 million, as you've stated, and it used to be then you had a 5-year residency requirement before you could seek indefinite leave to remain. That's now being merged. My question is this: when someone is moving from the EIC payment to the indefinite leave to remain, is there a further eligibility test? And if so, what is it? And if not, thank you.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, moving forward under the revised EIC policy, there is no second leg, so there is no second set of eligibility requirements. All the eligibility requirements will be on the front end, and one is to receive an economic investment certificate.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you. You've already referenced in your previous answer that the residential certificate is then indefinite. Are there shorter versions, or will it be assumed that each application at that point under Section 5 will be indefinite?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, underneath the economic investment certificate policy, the only residential certificate that we will be giving out moving forward is under Section 32.5. There are, however, under the Bermuda Immigration Act other provisions which would allow persons to be resident in Bermuda for periods up to 5 years.
Thank you. Supplementary, MP Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm just curious whether once these holders of this residency certificates for an extended period of time indefinitely, they will be then counted as a member of the population. If they choose to leave Bermuda at any time, will that be reflected in population numbers? And I'm asking this especially if the population grows significantly under this scheme.
Okay, Minister.
To remain eligible for a residential certificate, one has to have minimum stay in Bermuda of 90 days. If one is not meeting that 90-day requirement, the certificate can be revoked.
Supplementary,
Second question.
second question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Minister. You talked about how this new change would be retrospective to certain categories of residential certificate holders, but not to certain other categories of residential certificate holders, drawing a distinction between those who obtained a residential certificate under the 2021 policy, who would fall within this new approach, against those who applied, I believe, under the 2015, and is it the 2003? I may have had my dates wrong. The 2015 and the 2003 pool of people who will not be able to take advantage of this new approach. Can you explain why you're drawing a distinction between two pools of residents? Thank you.
Minister.
I'm not drawing a distinction between two pools of residents, but what I do want to say is that those persons who came in under the 2021 policy all invested $2.5 million. Those persons who received residential certificates under the 2003 and 2015 policies, those individuals received residential certificates simply by being wealthy. They did not demonstrate any investment in the community. And so that is why those persons who have received residential certificates under the 2021 policy, it makes no sense, practical sense, to make those individuals wait 5 years to receive a residential certificate when somebody who invests $2.5 million now gets automatic residency.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Does the ministry or the minister or cabinet generally anticipate increasing or alternatively decreasing the $2.5 million figure?
Minister.
At this point in time, the government is comfortable with the $2.5 million figure, and notwithstanding this $2.5 million, the statement indicates that the investments have been well over the $2.5 million threshold. And so we deem the policy to be effective as it currently stands.
Second sub or third question?
No, it's the second sub.
Second sub? Go ahead.
Well, or I can make it the third question. It's my last. Sorry.
I have a
I saw this sub.
supplementary, Mr. Speaker,
Oh.
if he's going to move to another question.
Okay, put your supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, will this policy change create greater economic activity and additional contributors to our tax system and have much needed additional revenue to Bermuda and Bermudians?
Mr. Speaker, we do believe that this change will make the EIC policy more attractive to potential investors, as well as open up the areas of investment that one can make.
Thank you. Supplementary, Ms. Jackson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is under the economic certificate and allowing residents to have indefinite stay here. Will the minister be looking to change some of the real estate policies, especially around the sale of condominiums that are owned by Bermudians that they would like to potentially sell to these new residents?
Understood.
Mr. Speaker, underneath in the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act, condominium purchases are restricted to PRC holders and residential certificate holders. However, the residential certificate holders issued under 32.5, The old policy was not issued under Section 32.5. As a result, those that were under the old residential certificate policy of 2021 were not able to purchase condominiums. With this change, individuals will be able to purchase condominiums.
Second sub, or would you like your third question?
Well, I'm actually on my second sub, or my
sub,
third.
well,
I have one question.
Yeah, that's
So,
right. You sat down just now, didn't put the question.
there you go.
Okay.
So I wanted to defer to MP De Silva. Minister, just back on that 2.5 million and these people who are applying, in your statement, when you said 113 million in real estate sales, am I to understand that these 113 million in real estate sales are by people who have participated in the EIC program?
Understood.
The entire amount that was stated for real estate sales is directly aligned with individuals who are participants in this EIC program.
Third question now.
Well, I'll just do that's my third question. Here's my first supplementary. Sorry,
Yeah,
what is directly aligned?
Say it again. No, that was the second sub on the second question. So now it is your third
Well,
question.
then my third question.
Third
Well,
question.
sorry, Minister, just for clarity, what does directly aligned mean? Does that mean these are an EIC person and there have been effectively 60 plus people who've put in 2.5 million into real estate? What does directly aligned mean?
Understood.
Directly aligned means that was the amount of real estate purchases connected to qualifying investments for eligibility.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Well, members, that brings us to a close of the question period for this morning. And I thank you for your participation this morning. And we'll now move on to the next item on the order paper.
Congratulatory and
And
or
the
obituary
obituary
speeches.
I assume there'll be members who would like to make a contribution here, and if you can just give me 1 sec to reset this time. Premier, you jumped up rather quickly this morning. Would you like to make a contribution?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to certainly lead the condolences which will come in the Honorable House today to the former minister, parliamentarian, magistrate, educator, and former chairman of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party, who was laid to rest this weekend, Mr. Arthur Hudson. Certainly, I'll associate all members. We know that he was a leader of the great generation of social champions in Bermuda, who bravely submitted his name for the first election under universal adult suffrage in 1968 under the banner of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. Certainly, there were many accolades that were given to him at his celebration of life service, and we are certainly grateful for his leadership and service to our country, and certainly proud that his legacy lives on with his granddaughter, Senator Ariana Hudson. I'll ask that the Honorable House to send a letter of condolence, certainly to his family, to his late wife, Ms. Hudson, and his children, Maria, Adinga, and Jelani. Certainly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to ask the Honorable House to send a letter of condolences to the family of the late Mr. George Donald Scott, and I'd like to associate all members who recently passed away in his 91st year. Of course, Mr. Scott was a dedicated civil servant who worked in the post office for 40 years, serving as Postmaster General for 8 years, and retiring as serving under 8 different Postmaster Generals. Certainly his legacy of dedication to public service lived on his children, such as former Cabinet Secretary Donald Scott, former Registrar of the Supreme Court, and then PLPMU and BIU Executive Mr. George Scott, and his daughter Charmaine Scott, who's still at the post office. So certainly, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the Honorable House do send a letter of condolences to that family. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to ask that a letter of condolence be sent to the family of former PLP candidate for Devonshire South, devoted trade unionist and well-known Bermudian fisherman, Mr. Danny Ferris, and asks that the entire House be associated with those particular remarks.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think we done when we first came in, but okay, I can't
Before we
remember.
first can,
Yeah.
that's a possibility, sir. I was
Yeah.
off island, so if done, I would like to associate myself.
Yeah.
And given that these things took place while I was off island, I'd also certainly like to associate myself with condolences that may have been given on February 3rd to the late Brian Morris, who was a constituent of mine who passed away
Yeah, that was done.
as well. And I'd certainly like to ensure that my condolences are associated with that. He was a larger than life personality, a constituent of mine, Mr. Speaker, in Pembroke West Central, and certainly someone who I enjoyed visiting even throughout his illness. He always had a wonderful spirit at all times, Mr. Speaker. And finally, I wish to extend the condolences to the family of my late constituent, Mr. Harold Smith, who died away in his 103rd year. Mr. Speaker, everyone will remember that he was famous for going around in his pink at all points in time. And if I may, Mr. Speaker, I know my time is up, but if I may give just a quick example of the dedication of the public service. The budget books of which we see printed were designed by Mr. Keno Simons. He works in the Department of Communications. Keno was Mr. Harold Smith's grandson.
Thank you.
And despite the fact that he buried his grandfather that day, he still returned back to the Department of Communications to finish off the budget statements and other items so they can be shared in this honorable House, Mr. Speaker. So it's just a recognition of the dedication of public servants and the wide range of experiences of which they have and what they do to make sure that this government works. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is there any other member who should make a contribution? Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to give condolences to the family of the late parliamentarian, businessman, teacher, lawyer, judge, Arthur Hudson, a well-known figure in Hamilton Parish, a God-fearing man, one who studied the Bible. In fact, you can remember even in caucus, Wednesday nights, Arthur Hudson had to leave at a certain time because he took Bible study very seriously. One of the guys that, I say guys respectfully, that is responsible for the gospel hall as it is today. It doesn't look very big from the roadside, but gospel hall can hold at least 300 people there. A very good edifice there, Mr. Speaker. Arthur worked hard. He worked hard trying to save people so that they can realize the hope that we all have one day to end up in heaven, Mr. Speaker. Arthur, I can recall going to a Bible study he started about 21 years ago in Hamilton Parish, and he invited me. So after much months of trying to get me come, I did go. And when you go there, you have to read a couple of verses from the Bible that they pick for you and then explain it. And when it came to my turn, I read it and I said, Arthur, I'm trying to understand what I read. Because, you know, the King James version of the Bible. So what he done, unbeknown to me, he went out and bought me a Bible in what I would call street language. So I didn't have that excuse anymore. That was Arthur Hudson. That's the type of guy he was, and he gave freely of himself and his time. He would give you a legal opinion and don't charge you a dime. But Arthur will be sorely missed in Hamilton Parish, particularly the Gospel Hall family and his entire family, and everyone that knew him will certainly miss Arthur Hudson, particularly Artie Simmons, who was his best friend, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable member, deputy. Does any other member wish to speak? MP Fogo, you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I won't take as long as the deputy speaker, but
He
wanted
used the
to-
3 minutes.
I wanted to chime in and associate myself with the condolences with respect to former MP Arthur Hudson. He indeed was a teacher and in fact did teach me at the Barclay Institute. I would say that he was a very challenging teacher because his style was very different from all of the teachers that I know. He challenged us to teach ourselves. And so, and I think in doing that, I was able to benefit in terms of developing some very excellent study skills. So I'm thankful for that. I had cause to appear before him in magistrate's court. And I did fight my own case. And I won my case. And then I'll call him Arthur now. Arthur called me into his office, and I was like, well, what did I do? Right? I was wondering what I had done. And in his office, he did congratulate me. And he did say, you presented your case better than many of the lawyers that appear in magistrate's court. I'm going to blow my own horn, right? No, but this is all. The colonel is looking at me, so I don't know. But no, but that is in fact true. I did win my case, and he did try and convince me to go to law school, but I wasn't having any of that. I just want to say that one of his pet peeves was education. It really was, and Arthur approached me many times regarding education because of more recent years, he was working with a particular group to try and introduce reforms. I will say, though I wasn't a part of that group, from time to time, he did update me, and he had fervently hoped that he would see some of those reforms come to fruition, so that I hope, even though he is no longer with us, that does happen. Mr. Speaker, and I would just like to also mention condolences for the Thompson family in St. George's from constituency 1. I'd like to associate Member Swan with these remarks. Anne Brangman Thompson, a matriarch of the Cott area in St. George's, and mother to okay, yes, I do need to associate the member from constituency 1, the representative from constituency 1. And thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will allow my colleague, Mr. Swan, to speak when he gets up. Thank you.
All right, you used all your 3 minutes. MP Swan, I see you on your feet. Would you like
Yes,
3
Mr.
minutes on the
Speaker, I'm
clock?
grateful the honorable member is going to let me speak. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be associated with the condolences to the family of the late Arthur Hudson. David Otterbridge Hudson, in fact, who was the brother-in-law to my late father Hubert. Mr. Speaker, so deepest condolences go to his sister, my stepmom, down there in Cottage Hill. And Mr. Speaker, I just had the most wonderful experience in 1999 with Mr. Hudson and the honorable member from Hamilton East, Mr. Derek Burgess, when we represented the CPA plenary, represented Bermuda at the CPA plenary. We started each day and ended each day in prayer as a group. We became kindred spirit. And I want to say we even represented the West Indian parliamentarians in cricket, all of us. Mr. Hudson was manager because when he went to Oxford, he had to prove that he had some sport. And Mr. Randy Horton organized a cricket match for him in Worcester so that he could have some sport. He said he wasn't quite the sports person, but he could put on his resume that he played in a major cricket match with a top world-class cricketer. And we got a good chuckle out of that one, Mr. Speaker. I would like condolences sent to the family of John Thomas Painter from Mullet Bay. Honorable member, Ms. Bogo would like to be associated. My dear friend, a longtime employee of Works and Engineering, who looked out for his community, and across from his house was a lay-by just completed, of which he supervised. And my dear friend, I will sorely miss John Thomas Painter indeed. And the time doesn't permit me to really go into the depth on these past 2 condolences I offered. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say congratulations to Mrs. Winifred Jones, who celebrated her birthday this weekend, her 93rd birthday. Longtime wife of Mr. Urban Jones, who's in about 95. And mother of Michael Jones, former mayor of St. George's, and Ms. Bogo. And I'm sure her niece, the honorable member from constituency number 1, would like to be associated with that as well. Ms. Jones still spends a lot of time in the church and is a prayerful woman, and we appreciate the prayers that go up for many people, including my family, on a daily basis from her. She's a delightful lady who earned a florist shop, and one day I hope that she could be recognized for such. Thank you and all the contributions in the community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Swan. Opposition Leader, would you like to make your contribution at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to associate myself with the comments made in regards to Arthur Hudson. I first met him as a student at Sands, and he was one of the many Black male teachers at the time. There was Solomon K. Willie, there was Kenneth Ritson, there was James Pierman and Dick Dade. They were role models for us young students, and they really made an indelible mark on us. He was not only there by himself, his wife was there at the same time. And I said to her at the funeral, I said, "You remember me?" She says, "Of course I do, Cole. I see a picture in the papers, and I remember you as a student at Sands." And so he has influenced me as a former teacher, and I can say that he is a worldly man, a giving man. I was very moved by his service, in that I have a special place for people who do missionary work in Africa. And I was surprised at the scale of the work that he did, and also the work that he did locally, how it was mentioned a number of times he didn't invoice people for his legal services. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also send condolences to the family of Elsie Rance. She is the mother of the former Colonel Alan Rance and her family. She died recently at a respectful age. I'd like to also send condolences to the family of Shirley Tuzo. She is survived by her son, Sean and Shannon. She was a schoolmate of mine, and in fact, she was at Sands with me at the same time. And we had a passion for art, and we went throughout school and the art classes together. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also say congratulatory remarks to Patrick Primary School for their Black History Month celebrations. As you know, they identified and honored Merle Brock Swan, yourself, Dr. Eve DeRosa, Randall Smith, Earl Cameron, the late Honorable Arnold Francis, Maxine Asdale, Sean Gota, Alfred Place, and Warwick Workman Slope. Mr. Speaker, I learned so much from the museum, because they had a museum for each honoree. What was most fascinating to me, Mr. Speaker, was the museum that they had in honor of Alfred Brown Place. And the young students were actually showing how they printed newspapers. And that was intriguing because I was not aware of that process. So I learned something during my visit here during Black History Month.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Deputy Premier, would you like to make a contribution?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ever so briefly, wish to be associated with the accolades to Patrick Primary. I went there more in a personal capacity than an official, and I can certainly let you know, as you're familiar with the exhibit and others have been, that the Francis family were very moved by the quality of the presentation on their father, Mr. Arnold Francis. So they were very moved, and they were very pleased with the enthusiasm of the students around the presentation. And all of the persons presented, Mr. Speaker, were so well done. And I was particularly impressed with what they also did with Earl Cameron, because the students were very good with how they presented him. And ironically, there's a family relationship between Earl Cameron and Mr. Francis, so that's also a bit ironic. Also would like, Mr. Speaker, to be associated with the condolences to former Minister and MP, Mr. Arthur Hudson, a gentleman who I knew my whole life associated with the PLP. One thing about him, he was always interested in the development of young people. And certainly I had the benefit of his advice and my counsel and my support as he appreciated any young person who became serious about politics in any way. Would also like, Mr. Speaker, if it hasn't already been done, to just note a few very interesting anniversaries that as we close out February. One being the anniversary of Minister Diallo Rabane, who was elected 7 years ago to join this House. Cannot miss also the anniversary of one Derek Burgess, who on February 24th, and I think that is today. Is that the date today? No, I'm sorry. February 24th, I'm sorry. Friday, yes, but we didn't speak on Friday. Has his 25th anniversary being in this House, and he came to the House 25 years ago on that date. And we can't miss, Mr. Speaker, of course, not mention yourself, February 9th, 1989. You joined this House, as well with about a few other people, Julian Hole, Dame like Jennifer Smith, David Allen, and Nelson Bascom, whom ironically I serve in Pembroke East now with the consistency with his former name. So just to give accolades to all those persons, and history clearly was made with all three of those persons who came to the House. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. MP Simmons Wade, you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to associate myself with Paget Primary. This, of course, was their 5th Bermuda History Museum. They've covered many people who have contributed to Bermuda, and it's made not just the students of the school, but everyone who visited very, very proud of the accomplishments. I'd also like to associate myself with Arthur Hudson and all the comments that were made. He was a very good friend of my husband's, and he contributed significantly, not just to this country, but also to the PLP. I would also like to express my condolences to Sharon Washington on the past.
Oops.
Oh, you already did it?
No, not you. Keep talking. Yeah, good. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I can keep going?
Yes, keep good.
On behalf of the passing of her late mother, Millicent Washington. She was from the East, but she contributed significantly to the area of nursing. I met her actually 48 years ago at what is now Maui, but at St. Brendan's Hospital. She was one of the first Black nurses in this country. She trained at the Cottage Hospital because at that time, King Edward Hospital didn't allow Black nurses to work there. It was actually in 1958 where they first started to let Black nurses work at the hospital. She was a trailblazer for many, many nurses. She encouraged nurses' aides as well as nurses to get further education. She moved actually in 1972 to St. Brendan's, where she worked for the rest of her life. She actually died at 98, just a week or so short of her 99th birthday. She delivered many, many, many babies. She was a midwife as well in St. George's. So thank you very much, Mrs. Washington, for your contribution. Yes.
Okay.
I thought you were waving. I associate Simon said, Ms.
You associate the whole House.
The House.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Does any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? MP Kennedy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to add my sentiments to the Hudson family on the passing of Arthur. What a lot of people didn't know was that he was very close to our family. Coming out of Bayless Bay, my mother's a Bayless Bay girl, and they grew up together. And so I was hauled into his office in this particular building, and we owe thanks to him for this building, that we're in. And I was hauled into the office several times to get a history lesson for sure. So again, a great man, and I appreciate that the fact that he was proactive and actually calling me out and say, "Listen, come in. I want to have a chat with you," which I felt was a commendable, knowing that not realizing how close my mother and him and the family were. So again, condolences there. I didn't hear from Brother Swan. He knows the whole constituency, number 2, the passing of Esther Harvey. Yes. I figured you would know I was going to say it. A staple. I mean, anyone from St. George's and not from St. George's knows the Harvey family. They lived right next to the St. George's Cricket Club. Esther and I grew up together. Although she was in St. George's, she was always in St. David's. We were all related, and associate MP Fogo for this here. But sad, a young woman, same age as myself, who unfortunately succumbed to cancer. And I just pray that we come up with a solution to that. It's just taking far too many people at a young age. And so condolences to the Harvey family. Her brother, Tommy, you would also know, has run in constituency 2 as well on behalf of the One Bermuda Alliance. And so it's a sad time for St. George's to see the passing of such a staple person. She was not of small stature, and to see how the cancer just removed that away was pretty sad. And to her kids as well, our condolences. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member? MP Government Whip has been jumping for a while, so I'm going to recognize the Government Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to be associated with the condolences to the Hudson family, and certainly thank them for lending him to us. Arthur was actually a family friend, and I can certainly say that in my early days of meeting him, I would have limited conversation with him because I thought his intellect, he had a sixth sense, and I thought he was reading my mind. So I was really afraid of him. So we really didn't have a lot of conversation during that period. But when I joined the party and moved up the ranks and became a chairman of the party, he himself, having been a chairman, was giving me lots of advice. And he always said to me, don't pick sides, just be true to yourself. So that was something that I certainly remembered him for. Let me also say that Arthur always tried to invite me to his Bible studies. But the thing is, they were on Saturdays, and I played golf on Saturdays. That was the only day I could play. I could play it. And so I had to always come up with an excuse to tell him that I couldn't make the Bible study today. But what he would do is he would send me he would send me the lesson so that I would know what the lesson was. And he always had this habit of calling me up and saying, oh, did you see the second part of the lesson? What was your answer to that? And I was so embarrassed because I never even read it anyway, but I do apologize for that. But he was that sort of person, very jovial and friendly. And as I said, I only wish that I had had some earlier conversations with him before, but as I said, his intellect was way above mine, and so I just sort of stayed away from him, but he will be missed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Does any other member? MP De Silva, you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too would like to be associated with the condolences to the family of our beloved brother, Arthur Hudson. And Mr. Speaker, not only do I want to give his family condolences, but I would also like to give them thanks. Because as we know, when we sit in this house and do this job, Mr. Speaker, we spend a lot of time away from our family. And he spent not only much time in this house, but also in the party itself. And you will know, Mr. Speaker, that he was part of the team that actually formed our Constitution. And I mean our Progressive Labor Party Constitution. And I guess the most proudest part about our Constitution and him being a part of that is that the OBA have since changed their Constitution to mirror most of ours, Mr. Speaker. And I think that Arthur deserves a lot of credit for that. And maybe the Honorable Member Cole Simons, the opposition leader, deserves some credit for that too. Because as he consulted and spent time with Arthur, I'm sure that he got some of that drift and sort of pushed his party to mirror our Constitution. Whilst I'm at congratulations, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate the opposition leader, Mr. Cole Simons, once again, because I just received some breaking news that he's withdrew his position on the travel authorization fee, and also the position of them imposing a VAT on the healthcare services. So I'd like to congratulate him on withdrawing that and sort of stepping away from it. So congratulations to him. Mr. Speaker, whilst I'm on my feet, I would like to, and I declare my interest, Mr. Speaker, congratulate my son-in-law, Collie Buds. Now, Mr. Speaker, I admit I don't know much about that entertainment business whatsoever. I do know that he
Don't you
received.
then try and sing a few lyrics?
Pardon? No,
Just-
no,
just
no. You
don't
won't
try
worry
and sing
about-
a few
Mind
lyrics.
you, the last time I
No.
sang for some of his lyrics, Mr. Speaker, I ended up in court, as you know. But so, Mr. Speaker, I'll stay away from those lyrics. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate him and his team for receiving what they call an RIAA Gold Plaque. And that is for a record that has sold over 500,000 copies, Mr. Speaker. So I would like to congratulate him for that. And, Mr. Speaker, not only that, he is booked this year for over 76 shows/concerts, which he will be involved in, and he'll be performing in over 320, in front of over 325,000 people this year, Mr. Speaker. Maybe one day the Bermuda Tourism Authority might recognize that and do a deal with him to promote Bermuda as they should. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? Minister Birch, you have your 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'd like to be associated with the condolences to Mr. Arthur Hudson, who also taught me at Sands along with his wife. And I concur with the comments of the opposition leader about the number of black male teachers that we had at Sands at that time. The only one he left out was Alfred DeGrade, who also taught at Sands.
Right.
Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to be associated with condolences to Miss Elsie Rands. I, of course, served for a number of years in the regiment with her son, Alan, and wish that family sincere condolences. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be associated with condolences to Ms. Shirley Tuzo, who was a constituent of mine. Both her and her husband, I enjoyed many visits with them and hearing how we could do things better in this country, particularly for people that were wheelchair bound, as her husband was for a number of his latter years. So I ask that condolences be sent to her family as well. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Minister. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? Any other? No. Before we move on, I'd just like to add mine to some of the remarks this morning. Of course, the remarks that are expressed to the Paget primary on the 5th celebration of Black History Month. As one of those who are recognized this year, I was pleasantly surprised with the depth of the information and the creativity that went into the display that they've done on that museum, in their museum for P4 under Miss Monica Smith. And I would like to publicly thank her and her class for the recognition that they gave to myself, as well as all the other teachers and students who've done museums on other members of our community. All of them were outstanding and all needs to be recognized for what they've done. The remarks of condolences expressed on the passing of Brother Arthur, I naturally am associated with those as well. And we've mentioned already how, you know, when you sat with Brother Arthur, you always got a history lesson. Well, what many may not know is that the Lister family are rooted in the Gospel Hall Church as well, and generations before me. And he would always somehow bring that into a conversation when we sat around and he started talking about yesteryears, and he would beam and he starts to talk about the back history or early history days of his beginnings in the Gospel Hall with my relatives. So it was a regular occurrence that I knew would come up when we would sit and have those conversations. But I want to recognize two other pieces of that I remember, and much has been said, so I won't repeat what's been said, but Minister Hudson had an impact on the sustainability, that vision that came to the PRP government back then when I was around the cabinet table. And He done much to promote that. When we look at the Parliament grounds, as I sit here speaking, thinking of Parliament grounds every day when I drive in, all the cedar trees that are growing up around, that was part of his vision to get rid of the casuarinas, which he saw as an invasive species to our community, and replace the cedar as much as he could. And to set that example, he had the cedar trees planted around Parliament. And just in recent years, the last of the casuarinas were taken down by Minister Burch's ministry recently. But that was Arthur Hudson who started that. And my last comment will come from remarks I expressed at his funeral on Saturday by his granddaughter, Senator Hudson, who in her remarks made reference to a challenge that he put to her in her preparing herself for public presentations. He said, it's not about raising your voice. It's about raising your argument. And the impact he's had on the grounds of Parliament will always stand when we see the cedar trees there. I'd like to see that comment stand as a tribute to Arthur, that when we're in these chambers, that is our argument that we raise and not our voice. Thank you, members. Our debate be raised, not our argument. Thank you. We raise our debate, our discussion, our turn, and not our voices. We can move on, Ms. Bill.
Matters of privilege.
There are none.
Personal explanation.
There are none.
Notice of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance.
There are none.
Introduction of bills.
There are none.
Government bills.
None.
Opposition bills.
None.
Private members bills.
None.
Notice of motion.
There are none.
Orders of the day.
Orders of the day, members. We are now starting the purpose for this season, the individual debates on the estimates of revenues from the respective ministries. And today is day one of that. And for the listening audience, once we go into committee on the debates of the respective heads for today, there are 8 hours allotted each day. And once we're in committee of supply, it's the practice is that the speaker, as you know, for any time that we're in committee, the speaker is out of the chamber. So when we move to that stage today, we'll be in the hands of a chairperson. I believe the first chairman this morning will be MP Scott, and we'll be in committee for the next 8 hours at that point. So I'll be out of the chair, and I'll return at the end of the evening to close us out with the order of business that remains at that point. At this point, Deputy Premier, would you like to move us?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now resume in the Committee of Supply to consider the estimates of revenue and expenditure for 2022-2023.
Are there any objections? No objections? Chairman Scott?
Good morning, honorable members. We are now in the Committee of Supply for further consideration of the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year 2023-2024. We are going to be debating heads 36, 53, 68, 81, and 82 are now to be debated. It is currently 11:49. And those 5 heads come to a total of $75,291,000. I call on the minister in charge to proceed. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move the following heads: 36, Ministry of Public Works Headquarters; 53, Bermuda Housing Corporation; 68, Department of Parks; 81, Department of Public Lands and Buildings; and 82, the Department of Works and Engineering, be now taken under consideration. Mr. Chairman, the Ministry of Public Works is responsible for maintaining Bermuda's critical assets and infrastructure in addition to delivering the many services this island depends on. A few of the assets and infrastructure areas that the ministry is responsible for maintaining include over 2,000 acres of land and over 750 buildings maintained by public lands and buildings with an insured value of over $1.5 billion. Over 600 roads amounting to approximately 225 kilometers of road surface, over 80 public docks and purpose-built berths servicing cruise ships, cargo ships, and hundreds of private vessels and yachts each year. Multiple reservoirs with a capacity of over 2 million gallons of Bermuda's precious and very limited freshwater resource, 75 amenity parks, beaches, and school grounds, and the Ocean View and Port Royal golf courses. Mr. Chairman, it cannot be overstated how critical this vast and diverse ministry is, not only to our nation's economy by generating job opportunities within the construction sector, but to everyday citizens as well. Not a day goes by that an individual on island does not interact with any assets or infrastructure maintained by the Ministry of Public Works. To this end, the maintenance and enhancement of our infrastructure and facilities must remain a priority, because infrastructure development is a vital component in encouraging any country's economic growth and ensuring a basic standard of life. For example, infrastructure development will help provide the adequate capacity for the future growth Bermuda so desperately needs, help enhance the visitor experience when they come to Bermuda, and more importantly, it will help provide a key source of job creation and economic empowerment going forward. Mr. Chairman, with this brief introduction in mind, I'm now pleased to present the budget allocation to the Ministry of Public Works for the 2023-24 fiscal year. Mr. Chairman, the 2023-24 budget allocation to the ministry as found on page B213 is $75,291,000. This represents an increase of $6,032,000 or 9% from the original 2022-23 budget. Mr. Chairman, the anticipated revenue for the ministry is $14,499,000. This revenue is derived primarily from the following areas: Public Works Headquarters, $16,000. The Department of Parks, $142,000. The Department of Public Lands and Buildings, $2,423,000. And the Department of Works and Engineering, $11,918,000. This is an increase of $1,488,000 over the current 2022-23 budget. 90% of this increase can be attributed to small fee increases in waste and water services in the Works and Engineering Department. A further 8% is due to increases in the rental income generated by a small number of renegotiated lease contracts. The appreciable amount in the remaining 2% is due to anticipated increased revenues from park services. The ministry's total capital budget for 2023-24 is $48,012,000. Although this is an increase of $8,378,000 over the current year's original budget, it actually is a decrease of $4,859,000 from the revised budget, which accounts for the $13,100,000 of cabinet-approved revisions for the times-based stabilization works and the Bermuda Housing Corporation's additional residential housing grant. Programs that will be highlighted in more detail further in my presentation. This capital budget includes capital development of $44,637,000 and capital acquisitions of $3,375,000. The ministry's established number of employees, which is referred to as full-time equivalents, FTEs, for the fiscal year 2023-24 is 685, an increase of 1 from the established number for the current fiscal year as seen on page B213. It should be noted that the forecast for the current year has a head count of only 528 posts. Mr. Chairman, this puts a spotlight on the level of work that is being performed by the current workforce. And I thank the hardworking staff at the ministry for their service in ensuring that Bermuda's infrastructure is maintained. Mr. Chairman, I now direct honorable members to Head 36, the Ministry of Public Works Headquarters. Mr. Chairman, the overarching objective of the ministry headquarters, finance and administration, is to provide centralized support to the departments within the ministry, which includes the Department of Public Lands and Buildings, the Department of Works and Engineering, and the Department of Parks, and by extension, the various Krangos in the ministry to ensure delivery of their varied services and operating programs. The services provided by the Ministry of Public Works headquarters are organized into the following 5 programs, which are found on page B215. 1, Code 3601, Head Office Administration, 3610, Accounts, 3611, Purchasing, 3612, Telecommunications, and 3613, Central Office Administration. Head Office Administration Program 3601. Mr. Chairman, the Head Office Administration Program 3601 is comprised of the Executive Offices, Headquarters, Administration, and Safety and Health. Head Office Administration, under the direction of the Permanent Secretary, provides oversight and management support to the entire Ministry of Public Works. It also ensures that the Minister's policy objectives are met and specifically is responsible for the implementation of the Ministry's throne speech initiatives, yearly business plan, management of safety and health matters, compliance, and numerous special administrative projects. Mr. Chairman, during 2022-23, the Safety and Health Office offered 12 training sessions to staff totaling 68 hours of safety training, which was attended by 92 employees. The ministry also conducted various safety and health assessments, not only to protect its employees when undertaking activities, but to also mitigate any risk the public may be exposed to as a result of ministry activities. The safety and health assessments have resulted in new safety procedures being developed and implemented. Mr. Chairman, the operational budget for the Head Office Administrative Program 3601 is $2,408,000 for fiscal year 2023-24, an increase of $293,000 over the current year. This increase is almost entirely staff-related. Although only one new post has been created, a cabinet-approved policy analyst position, there have also been increases in pay rates for several posts resulting from reviews by the Management Consulting Services section of the Department of Employee and Organizational Development. Public Works Accounts Program 3610. Mr. Chairman, the Accounts Program 3610 provides accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, capital asset recording, and non-financial and financial reporting functions for the operating departments within the ministry. This section also prepares and distributes weekly payroll, vendor checks, and invoices for services provided by the ministry's operational areas, as well as the collection and recording of online bank payments, credit card, cash, and check receipts. Through the use of the centralized accounting system, this section manages the yearly budget preparation and provides monthly management reports to the budget office, a process that enables the effective and efficient monitoring and control of the ministry's current account budget, along with the ministry's capital development and capital acquisition budgets. Mr. Chairman, the accounts section's focus for the fiscal year 2023-24 will be the ongoing collaboration with the Accountant General's Department to improve on its business processes relating to the E1 system. This includes inventory, job costing, and fixed assets, with particular effort placed on the fixed asset listings. The operational budget for the Accounts Program 3610 is in the amount of $1,197,000 for fiscal year 2023-24, an increase of $131,000 from the original fiscal year 2022-23 budget. This increase is also staff-related, attributed to the filling of 2 vacant posts, one of them being a trainee post. The Purchasing Program 3611. Mr. Chairman, the Purchasing Program 3611 provides centralized purchasing support, inventory management, warehousing, and disposal functions to the other departments and programs within the ministry and to other external departments from time to time. Mr. Chairman, the purchasing section's focus for the fiscal year 2023-24 will be reviewing and enhancing the controls, procedures, and policies for the ministry, specifically undertaking for the recently completed centralized operations facility, the creating and improving of supply chain related policies, and the updating of procedures and end user instructions. In addition, this section will see the establishing of supply contracts through competitive bidding, as well as working with the Accountant General to maximize the use of section-specific functions and capabilities of the E1 system, with a focus on inventory control, contract pricing, and key performance indicators reporting. Mr. Chairman, the Purchasing Program 3611 operational budget is $1,421,000 for 2023-24, an increase of $54,000 over the current year. Once again, this is staff-related, as the ministry is filling a critical management post that has been vacant for several years. Additionally, the section is realizing salary scale increases resulting from the previously mentioned MCS review process. Telecommunications Program 3612. Mr. Chairman, the Telecommunications Program 3612 provides a suite of services such as replacement telephones and related equipment and the management of mobile service contracts to the ministry. Mr. Chairman, the government owns and operates a portfolio of 7 communication tower sites across the island, with the towers located at the Somerset Police Station, Elton Hill in Southampton, Warwick Camp, 2 towers at the police come-ups area in Prospect, the Quarry, and at Fort George in St. George's. Mr. Chairman, during the past year, the structural surveys undertaking highlighted the lack of regular maintenance of the telecom towers, which has resulted in every tower displaying various stages of corrosion. As these sites and infrastructure are critical to operations and are of national importance, the ministry has implemented a maintenance program to ensure adequate landscaping for safe site access, tower safety, air conditioning, and power. The telecommunications team will continue its remediation works over the next fiscal year for the issues identified. The ministry will also carry out planned maintenance and make the necessary adjustments to minimize the risk of failure in the future. Some major upgrades have been completed during the past few years. For example, Mr. Chairman, the new Prospect Tower was commissioned and major refurbishments were completed to the Fort George Communications Building in 2021 and 2022, respectively. However, security of the system remains a concern. Upgrades to the security and site access will continue to be a focus during the 2023-24 fiscal year. Our operational budget will additionally provide for camera monitoring and digital access. As these sites are shared with telecommunication tenants, Managing access has become more vital as government now manages its own emergency radio station through the Ministry of National Security. Mr. Chairman, the Telecommunications Program 3612 has been allocated an operational budget of $777,000 for fiscal year 2023-24, a decrease of $22,000 when compared to the current budget. The reduction is a lower cost to provide the phone services through contract renegotiation. Central Office Administration Program 3613. Mr. Chairman, this program was previously called the Human Resource Program due to its emphasis on employee services. Although most of these services have now been centralized under the Department of Employee and Organizational Development, the ministry is still required to assist with recruitment and employee relations, in addition to training and development services for the various departments and staff. Mr. Chairman, the second area of support under the Central Office Administration is central filing, which provides records management for all human resource records, cabinet documents, capital projects and contracts, as well as maintains records for the ministry's legislative functions. Mr. Chairman, the Central Office Administration Program 3613 has been allocated an operational budget of $336,000 for fiscal year 2023-24, an increase of $58,000 when compared to the current budget. This increase is attributed to additional training opportunities for staff in this section, as well as beneficiaries of, again, the aforementioned MCS review process. Full-time equivalents. Mr. Chairman, the budgeted number of employees for the Ministry of Public Works headquarters is 40, as reflected on page B217. The headcount has increased by 1 for the 2023-24 fiscal year, as the ministry has established a new policy analyst post in accordance with the cabinet-approved requirements as mentioned earlier. Performance measures. Mr. Chairman, during 2023-24, the Public Works headquarters will aim to conduct 4 safety and health assessments with corrective actions and conduct 12 safety and health training sessions for ministry employees. In addition, the ministry will continue to expand the medical services program for employees that have the potential to be exposed to a variety of hazardous environments and substances while at work. The ministry has identified approximately 120 employees that would benefit from the medical services program in the next fiscal year. More importantly, these safety and health initiatives continue to allow the ministry to be in compliance with the requirements of the Occupational Safety and Health Act 1982 and the Occupational and Safety Health Regulations 2009. Mr. Chairman, additional performance measures will see Public Works headquarters aim to, 1, improve the procurement cycle time from requisition to creation of purchase orders in 2 days, 95% of the time, and 2, produce detailed reports on all operational and capital actual versus budgeted expenditures each month by the 10th day of the following month, 100% of the time. Capital development. Mr. Chairman, with regards to the major capital projects being managed by the Ministry of Public Works headquarters, the overall 2023-24 capital expenditure plan for the Public Works headquarters is $7,027,000. This represents $3,152,000 less than the amount allocation for the fiscal year 2022-23. These savings are due to the consolidation and refinancing of several capital loans managed by the West End Development Corporation. Details are found on page C5 through C7 of the capital accounts estimates. Capital developments also include Cost Center 75050, minor works, nil. Cost Center 75053, miscellaneous small projects, 100,000. Cost Center 75054, Redco Capital Grant, 1,112,000. Cost Center 75099, office relocations and alterations, $2 million. Cost Center 75306, golf courses improvements, $600,000. Cost Center 75334, Redco South Basin Land Reclamation, $2,715,000. Cost Center 75003, Corporation of St. George's Grant, $500,000. Cost Center 75358, roadside fencing, nil. Cost Center 75359, landscape works, nil. Mr. Chairman, the Ministry of Public Works will provide capital grants of $10,100,000 to the Bermuda Housing Corporation. This is found on page C6 of the capital accounts estimates. Further details will be provided in my presentation on Head 53. Capital acquisitions. Mr. Chairman, the overall 2023-24 capital acquisitions plan for the Public Works headquarters is $172,000. This is an increase of $34,000 from the 2022-23 budgeted allocation. Details are found on page C14 under Schedule C of the capital accounts estimates, and the capital acquisitions include Cost Center 76868, communications equipment, $172,000 towards capital maintenance of the communication towers. Krangers. Mr. Chairman, in addition to the ministry's direct management over its departments, we also provide oversight and the occasional financial support to the Krangers, namely Redco, the Bermuda Land Development Company, the golf courses, and the Bermuda Housing Corporation. Mr. Chairman, the BHC will be discussed in greater detail directly following this presentation of Public Works headquarters. Redco and BLDC are in the process of a merger for which we anticipate will allow for greater efficiencies of both physical assets as well as human talent. We are expecting this new single entity to emerge on or before January 2024. Since my announcement of the merger some months ago, the companies have already made operational changes within similar departments along with their merged accounting functions. The ministry projects that in 2023-24, we will experience a savings of up to $700,000 as a result of these realized efficiencies and renegotiated supplier contracts. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to report that after 2 consecutive years of operating shortfalls due to the COVID pandemic, 2022-23 has seen a return to near self-reliant financial operations for Redco. Mr. Chairman, although capital grants from government are still required, Redco continues to maintain and improve on its existing infrastructure. The short-term rental of Star of India and Moresby House are prime examples. We are also pleased with the continued residential upgrades at Princess Louise Terrace, as well as several other units at Bowes Island. Mr. Chairman, Redco is working with the Ministry of Public Works and the Ministry of Transport to deliver the relocation of the Marine and Ports Workshop to the former Oracle building located in the South Basin. This team is advancing the completion of the bid process, and works are intended to commence during the first quarter of the 2023-24 fiscal year. The expected completion schedule is for 6 to 8 months thereafter. Mr. Chairman, although largely under the BLDC mandate and not normally reported in this forum, due to the enormity of the impact in the east end of the island, I'm pleased to give an update on the East End Water and Wastewater Project. This has been a massive undertaking, with so many facets to the project, coupled with countless contractors carrying out different aspects of the infrastructure upgrade works. To that end, I'm pleased to report that the project is scheduled to be completed within the second quarter of 2023, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Despite various delays, it is expected to be completed within the original budget of $13 million. When completed, the upgrades will supply the East End with ample potable water for generations to come. This will also usher in the new waste collection system and a new waste treatment system that can accommodate hotels in the East End, as well as the Corporation of St. George's and Southside. Finally, and most impactful to the natural environment of the entire island, we get to see the closure of the current St. George's waste outfall at Tobacco Bay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank the respective boards, the management and staff of both BLDC and WEDCO for continuing to deliver their normal day-to-day operation and capital projects while still effecting this strategic merger. Moving quickly to another Kringle, Mr. Chairman, the Port Royal and Ocean View golf courses are public courses that provide an affordable opportunity for residents to hone their golfing skills. Particular mention must be given to the Port Royal Golf Course, whose management and staff work diligently year-round to prepare the site for the PGA's annual Bermuda Championship tournament. Since the inaugural tournament in 2019, the PGA continues to contribute to the tourism sector by drawing international attention to Bermuda. Mr. Chairman, as seen on page C6, the ministry remains steadfast in its approach to support any improvements to these recreational facilities by allocating an operational grant of $900,000 and a capital grant of $600,000 for the 2023-24 fiscal year. No change from the previous fiscal year. Capital funding will replace the substandard tee boxes at Ocean View, repair the fire system at Port Royal, replace clubhouse shutters at Ocean View, and purchase various equipment for both courses. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank the Board of Trustees, management, and staff of the Port Royal and Ocean View golf courses for their commitment and dedication in providing this outstanding service. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation for the Ministry of Public Works Headquarters, Head 36, and I'll now turn to Head 53. I probably won't get through all of this, but in the next 12 minutes, but we'll break whenever you say.
All right, well, yeah, we can go until 12:30.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, the mission and statement of the Bermuda Housing Corporation, the mission statement of the Bermuda Housing Corporation is to provide accessibility to adequate, affordable housing and promote independent living to enhance the quality of life in Bermuda. The vision statement of the corporation is every Bermudian will reside in an adequate and safe environment. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Housing Corporation will be receiving 3 grant allocations for this fiscal year to support both its operational and capital requirements. Firstly, Mr. Chairman, the Ministry of Public Works allocates an operational grant that is utilized to subsidize the annual cost of repairs, normal maintenance of properties, support services for families and individuals, and rental assistance via the rent geared to income to clients of the corporation, and for the continuation of the Hustle Truck program, a program that I will go into more detail in a few minutes. Mr. Chairman, for years, this annual operational grant has remained the same in the amount of $6,050,000. found on page B219. However, this year, an additional $500,000 will be allocated, bringing the total amount of this grant to $6,550,000. The reasoning for this increase is primarily owed to the rise in maintenance costs for the units, i.e. construction and minor repair works. The second grant the BHC is budgeted to receive is a capital grant of $5,800,000 found on page C6 for 2023-24, which represents a decrease of $500,000 from the previous year. The capital grant will be used to pay for the interest and principal amounts due on the corporation's outstanding bank loans. The third grant the BHC is budgeted to receive is a capital grant of $4,300,000 found on page C6 and will be allocated for phase 2 of the previously announced residential building program. Mr. Chairman, I invite honorable members to recall in October 2022, the government announced the residential building program. As mentioned previously, over the 3.5-year project, that is 2022-23 to 2025-26, the BHC will complete the refurbishment of 137 units, inclusive of increasing the available affordable rental stock by 77 units at an estimated sum of $20,605,000. There are no other changes between the 2022-23 and 2023-24 grant allocation. As a reminder, Mr. Chairman, the primary functions of the BHC are to provide housing in Bermuda, to promote home ownership, to undertake and carry out housing schemes, and to undertake such other functions in connection with housing as the minister responsible for housing may require. The corporation entered into a public-private partnership known as the Home Start Program with Clarion Bank to assist hardworking Bermudans to obtain their first home. To date, the Home Start Program has assisted 34 Bermudian families in their quest to become first-time homeowners. The initiative has been very successful in providing properties available for sale at affordable levels of purchase. The sale prices of these properties have been significantly reduced in return for sweat equity to bring the properties back to a healthy, habitable state. The corporation, in partnership with Age Concern and the government of Bermuda, continues to assist our valued seniors and the disabled with a program designed to assist their families to help the vulnerable to remain in their own homes with dignity by providing interest-free loans of up to $15,000. This funding is for the purchase of furniture, fixtures, and fittings, and/or to make modifications or renovations to their home, which would make it easier for them to remain there, rather than being housed in a seniors facility. As a reminder, the purchase of the fixture and fittings under this program are duty-free. Since the inception of the program, BHC has provided loans for 32 seniors in a total amount of $411,626. Applications for this program remain available through the BHC website at www.bhc.bm or can be collected in person at the corporation's reception desk at the 7 Arches Building, 44 Church Street in Hamilton. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Housing Corporation, on behalf of the government of Bermuda, agreed to work with the Salvation Army on the replacement of 2 residential buildings located at the North Street shelter. This work commenced in September 2021, and we are pleased to report was completed on December 15, 2022. The Salvation Army have now taken over the operations of these 2 new buildings, each suitable of housing 14 persons. The total available new beds is 28. Mr. Chairman, the Bermuda Housing Corporation administers a number of programs in pursuit of its mission, including managing and leasing a large inventory of properties comprising houses, apartments, and building blocks. Some of these properties are owned by the corporation and others are leased from the private sector. The BHC manages approximately 500 government and private sector residential units island-wide and 8 transitional homes comprising of 180 rooms. As mentioned previously, the BHC also manages and controls the Hustle Truck Program, acronym for helping the unemployed sustain themselves with limited employment, which has been in successful operation since 2007. This year marks the 16th anniversary of the program. The corporation, through the Hustle Truck Program, has helped over 1,950 unemployed Bermudians in need with short-term temporary employment and assisted them with finding full-time jobs. In addition, the program has provided much valued assistance to our seniors, community groups, churches, schools, and neighborhoods. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to give an update on the work completed and ongoing as it relates to the $1,664,000 as part of the government's economic stimulus grant in 2021-22. There's a total of 7 properties included in this program, of which 4 have been completed. They are number 1, Rock Oven Lane in St. David's, a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit at $105,000. 5, Captain Fox Road in St. David's, a unit of 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms at $88,000. 15, Tommy Fox Road in St. David's, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, $43,000. Ripon Cottage in St. George's, 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms at $89,000. The remaining 3 projects are under construction with the following estimated completion dates. Regent House in St. George's is a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit with $95,000 worth of renovations. The estimated completion is August 2023. The second unit is at 2 Battery Road Lofts, Phase 1 in St. David's, 1 2-bedroom and 3 studio units at $444,000. Estimated completion is June 2023. Harmony Club Block B in Paget, 8 studios at $800,000, and the estimated completion is May 2023. Mr. Chairman, the BHC received a grant of $4,250,000 for Phase 1 of the residential building program. This phase consists of 9 projects for a total of 45 units, of which 40 will be additional units to BHC rental stock and 5 are refurbishing occupied units. 4 of the projects have received planning permission, have been tendered, and construction is underway. Those four units are number 3, Rock Oven Lane in St. David's, which is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit at $305,000. Estimated completion is July 2023. 18 North Shore Road, Smiths, a 2-apartment house for $175,000. Estimated completion is March 2023. 5 on Ginnis Lane, St. David's, a 4-bedroom and 2-bathroom.
Mr. Minister, we have reached 12:30, and I just wondered if you wanted to just wrap that sentence or paragraph up, and then we can have somebody take us to lunch.
I'll wrap the paragraph up. That works. So 5 on Ginnis Lane, St. David's, 4-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, $350,000. Estimated completion July 2023. 3 Pan Bermuda units in Sands, refurbishing of these 3 units to be completed in sequence at $200,000. Estimated completion August 2023.
Thank you, Minister. Did you want to have somebody to take us to lunch?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we break for lunch and return at 2 o'clock.
Are there any objections? So moved.